Welcome to my channel. My name is Valerio and it has been a while since the last video. First of all, sorry about it, but I've been a bit busy with life, everything. And second of it, this is a video that is a bit different than usual. This is a starter tutorial for people that have been thinking about starting to painting their Gundam's model of robot. And I tried to think about a video in which I could put all the information that I know about it, a single one. However, halfway through I found out that maybe one video might have been a tiny bit too long. So this is going to be a series of video, and for the Italian friends I will release another version of this video in Italian, so wait another couple of days. Now let's start. Why do you want to airbrush a Gundam? So nothing wrong about leaving it out of the box, nothing wrong about clear coat it, nothing wrong about just putting the water slide decals. However, if you want to get the maximum out of your model kit, well, or to make it more similar to how it is in your head or into the illustration, yes, airbrushing to the rescue. Now, airbrushing is not the only solution, but it kind of helps you. It simplifies a lot of process. You could always hand painting. I will do another video about hand painting. If you follow me on Instagram and you see some of my short story, most of the stuff there is hand painted. So most of it, some of it is hand painted. And the kind of knowledge for hand painting on Gunpla is like, it is normally made by people that are mainly miniature painter. I come the other direction around at this point. I'm more a modeler than anything. And well, anyway, let's go back to airbrushing. So you can receive good results. Eventually you can move into resin. So for who is this video? This video is for people that are thinking about an airbrush and want to know everything that you need to know about it. It's not about the techniques. I will do another video about it. I will do a video exactly about how to do airbrush. This is what you need to know before you start. Okay, so this is it. If you have any question, write them down below. I will reply to 100% of them. So before we start, one very important thing, safety. Safety first, guys. When you airbrush, you atomize paint, that acrylics or lacquer or enamel, or you choose it, is not good for your lungs. So you will need to have, for the lacquer, the kind of mask on the left with the yellow ribbon around it. These are filters that do expire after a while, and they are for organic vapor. Please remember organic vapor. If you airbrush acrylic, you still want a big mask, but the filters are a tiny bit less intense. Now guys, I saw once a video introducing airbrushing tutorial, and the guy was saying, yeah, you know, I don't put a mask on. And then 6 months in, I found out I had a headache. Guys, this is the number one thing you have to buy before the airbrush. Buy the mask. If you can, always remember, airbrush in a place where there is movement of air. You don't want to airbrush into a closed box, into a closed room. And second, you will also need to buy an extraction chamber, an airbrush boot, as it's called. They're not particularly expensive. They're like between $50 and $100, and fundamentally what it is a giant fan connected to a pipe that blows vapors outside. Now, not super mega important for acrylics, but it's super mega important for lacquer, guys. You don't want to breathe it in the same place where you sleep or stuff like that. Another important thing that I never see mentioned, gloves. You want to have gloves because you don't want paint on your hands. This can irritate, can be hard to remove, and then doesn't look great, honestly. So just buy gloves, they're cheap. You can use them, you can go on the single-use one. Depends, it's not like you're gonna make hole into that. Anyway, for safety and everything, that's it. If you have a question, ask me below. Now, second part you need to know before you buy an airbrush, you need a compressor. There are two kinds of compressor. There is a tankless one and the one with the tank. The one that you see in front of it is a tankless one. Now, why one kind versus another one? So normally within the Gunpla world, we work at low pressure, which means 1 bar, or give it or taking 18 psi. You go between 16 and 22 maximum. So you don't need that much more power. This is for the start, so this is okay. This occupies a tiny bit less space. It makes a tiny bit more noise, but depends. I bought this model because I was very limited in space when I started. These have been working great. However, if one day you decide that you want to go into bigger models, one with a tank might be useful. They are a tiny bit more expensive. So if space is not a problem and you have an extra few bucks, I will buy one with a bigger tank. Now the price of this stuff goes between $100 and $500 USD. I think $500, unless you do precision working, you're an artist, you cannot afford a change into the pressure of the air. Well, yeah, fundamentally, you will not need anything more powerful. This is gonna be good enough without a tank, but if you can go with one with a tank, it's just a few extra bucks. Now you will see there is a cable attached to it. This is the one that we're gonna attach to our airbrush. Now not all the airbrush compressor have one, and not all of the ones that have one included are compatible with your airbrush. Iwata, for example, that is used to include an adapter, or at least airbrush have an adapter for an Iwata compressor. I don't see that happening anymore, so maybe they went more in. However, I do find myself very comfortable with this one. There are a ton of good ones, and there are the no-brand ones that are as good as. Now, unless you own 50 airbrushes and the name of your YouTube channel is Spaghetti Miniatures, yes, don't go with something that is around 500 bucks. There is no need for that. If you are a miniature painter, different discussion. Now you see that is the gauge that show you the pressure. We always gonna be moving between 18, 20, 22, 16. You move the valve, it regulates the pressure. And so I say this pressure, but this might depend on how you like to spray. A few things are subjective about it. Distance of the airbrush from the piece, how you like your pressure. I know a real artist that like to press at 2 bars, which is crazy in my perspective, but this is how he likes to do. So you need to find what you like. Now, after we put Steve back on his feet, we're gonna go back. We finally gonna start to think about what most likely you came here for, higher brushes. So if you look around the market, you start to look for review, you will find out a lot of review about airbrushes made by people with different use for them that might or might not be within what is your same use. Say so, if this is your first airbrush, you don't want to spend too much money. There are some very good and cheap airbrush from Galeri. I'm not sponsored in any way from them, I just have a bunch of friends that use them. They're cheap, they're great, and if you break it, which is gonna happen with your first airbrush, you're not gonna cry, you're just gonna buy a new one. After you build some skill onto it, you can think about upgrading to something a tiny bit more performing. However, please remind this before I continue the explanation about airbrushes, higher price doesn't always mean higher quality. I will do a video about airbrush and miniature a bit down the line, but spending 700 bucks for an airbrush doesn't directly mean an improvement over 7 times on a $100 airbrush. Now, I have 3 airbrush. Why do I have 3? So I have a fancy one, the Harder Steinbeck CR Plus, the Infinity CR Plus, and this has a nozzle of 4.0 or 4 millimeters. And this is a bit fancy. Why is that? Well, first of all, it's not my first airbrush. I've been using for quite a few years, and the most important part for me is that for a fancy airbrush, I need to be able to find spare part very easily. Now, this is the kind of nozzle, 4 millimeter, 3 millimeter, 3.5. These are the one you'll be using for Gunpla, for medium-sized model kit. You don't need a bigger airbrush. You definitely don't want a smaller one, and what you want to is something within this range, 3, 4, 4.5. Why is that? Because the parts are not too small, the parts are not too big. You don't need an infinite level of precision, unless like me, you don't like to mask at all, and so, but that is discussion for after 10 years your brush. Anyway, so, but you don't need an infinity. That is, to clarify, you need that size, 3, 4, 3.5 nozzle, but you definitely don't need an infinity. You're gonna be good with a Galeri. This is a detail airbrush. I use this one for miniature painting. This is a 02, very precise, very cheap. It is like $80, but I can assure you there are way more expensive airbrush that I had that are less precision control and fits less good. And now this is an airbrush you might take into consideration. This is a bigger airbrush. The nozzle is a 5. And why would you use it? You will use it to put a clear coat. For a clear coat at the end, for a very, very thick clear coat, you want a big nozzle. or to paint very big parts. Let's say that you only do perfect grade, yes, that might actually simplify your work. However, the middle ground, this size, 3, 3.5, and 4, are the one that you want. Because you'll be able to do the detail, but also the larger part. It's just going to take a tiny bit more of effort. Said so, what is the price you can expect a good airbrush? Go and look on the gallery. There is a Madworks within the same price range. They are around $100. Don't Google how much is expensive this airbrush, because it's very expensive, and you won't need it, and you will break it at the beginning. At the beginning, you want to have something that you can play with. But remember, whatever it is, the price you want to spend, you always have to clean it after you finish the paint. No exception, expensive or not. So said so, I recommend as a first airbrush something in this range, 0.3, 3.5, 4, price around $100 to $130. Don't go into anything more fancy. You can upgrade after. And we are done with our brushes. Now let's start to paint. Okay, when you have a Gundam and you want to paint it, everybody will tell you you need a primer. However, they don't go too much into the detail. Now, if you're gonna use acrylic paints, yes, you need a primer. 100% of the time you need a primer. However, if you go with lacquer, you really don't need it. Now, what is a primer? A primer is a kind of paint that you spray over a material that allows for your subsequent start of paint to stick. So it's a more sticky paint. Now, more often than not, a primer is something, at least in the modeling world, you're supposed to sand after. So you look at it, you spray over the model, you see the imperfection, you sand it, you cover it again with primer. There are a lot of exceptions, a lot of difference over it. This is for acrylics. So here you see some acrylics and some lacquer primer. They have different function. This is an acrylic polyurethane water-based primer. It's great. This is, as far as I can see, as the same formulation as the Ammo one-shot primer. This is way cheaper, but it's the same formula. It's very good. The question is, why do I have to spray? Otherwise, if you go directly with acrylic, they will not stick. There is the super famous Vallejo one, there is the AK, there is the Army Painter. That is the one of acrylic primer. This is the one that I prefer. And now let's look at the lacquer one, which is, Valerio, you just told us that if I spray lacquer, I don't need a primer. Yeah, you will need a primer for two reasons. Reason number one, if you plan to mask, you need a primer. Otherwise, the normal lacquer paint will just fly off immediately. They're not super sticky. I thought they bond pretty good with the plastic. And you want to have a very homogeneous layer of color behind. So sometimes you look at the plastic and you kind of notice that the color behind is not perfectly the same in all the parts. Might be blemish or something like that. The other thing is that primer, 99% of the time, and the 1% is just white one, they are very, very opaque paint, which means they give you, if you spray it over, give you an opaque layer of color. Just remember which color to choose as a primer. If you're gonna use opaque paint over the primer, doesn't matter. But if you use kind of transparent paint, less opaque paint over the primer, remember the color that you put is gonna mix with the one below. So for example, if you put a black primer and then you go with a white that is not super opaque, let's say not a titanium white but a zinc white, it's gonna be almost impossible for you to have a fully white after. Now this can play to your advantage or not, just remember out of it, you need to know a tiny bit about the paint that you're gonna use. Now, this is the question that I had when I started. What is a primer? What is a surfacer? So a primer is what we were saying about, is thought to be sanded. The surfacer is just like, it's mainly like a more opaque color you put over it. Yes, you can mask on it. Technically you can sand it, but it's not as good as the primer. You will not fill the gaps, the holes, the sanding stretch over the piece as much as a primer. Now here they are in a lot of colors. 99% of the time I will recommend a black primer for a metallic one, unless it is gold and you're looking for a specific shade of gold. In that case I will go for a red oxide. Now Mr. Primer is very good. The surfacer Avon by Guyonot is pretty good. They have a different color and it works pretty well also with the resin, but we'll speak about the resin another time. Now guys, this video is gonna be super mega long, So this is another important about it. How do I thin surfacer and primer? Now, 99.99% of the time, you will thin it with Mr. Colon Leveling Thinner. In North America, it's very easy to find. It's a thinner with retardant, which means if your spraying is not perfect, it kind of tends to level itself out. And the thinning ratio, which means part of paint to parts of thinner, it's a 1-to-1 with Mr. Primer Surfacer and Mr. Finishing Surfacer, which means if you put a drop of thinner, you put a drop of primer. With the Surfacer Evo, which is the Gaianox one, it is 1 drop of paint, 2 drop of thinner. Now, I put different kind of thinner behind. They all have different kind of characteristic, but they work all in the same way. They all have a different smell. I do prefer the Gaianox one because it has a less intense smell than the Mr. Color Leveling Thinner, but they all work with each other. One can achieve a level of brightness different than the other one, but guys, they are all it's always the same, like very different. Like so anyway, in order to paint with lacquer, you will need this kind of thinner. This is only for lacquer paint. Sorry, I didn't specify at the beginning. You don't need this thinner for the acrylic. For the acrylic one, you can more often than not thinning with water or with acrylic medium. We're gonna look at it after when we speak about acrylic paints. So it's very important. Mr. Color Leveling Thinner is also the product you're gonna use to wash your airbrush. You will empty 2-3 times. You will backflush. I will do a video about it, so don't worry. Right now, it's just the stuff that you need to have in the house. Mr. Color Leveling Thinner is a great thinner also for lacquer colors, for everything but metallics. Okay, you want to have this one on your desk, on your boot. Like 99% of the people that I know use it. Now, let's go back to color. Acrylics. Why to use acrylics? So, first of all, acrylics are way safer than lacquer. Let's say you don't have a great boot, air is like the space is a bit more limited. These are way less toxic. See, still kind of plastic, so you don't want to breathe it too much. They are in a ton of brands, ton of variety, ton of pigments, ton of quality, and you can find them very easily in all the Western world. Now, if on the video you don't see too much acrylic paints getting used by Japanese people, it is fundamentally because acrylic paint, for the majority, a few good exceptions, they're made in the Western world. A lot of them come from Spain, some of them from the UK. They are much easier to find. Now, second things, very often you see very aggressive masking into a Japanese Gundam builder video, and the acrylics for masking are not as good as lacquer. So the quality of the pigment more often than not is much higher. You have way larger selection out of it, and they do allow for different kind of, for different level of work out of it. Moreover, thanks to the research, there are now some acrylic paint that behave 99% like a lacquer. Those are the Cobra and the Atom. And the good thing is that you can use techniques, you can use a lot of techniques that lacquer don't allow or are very hard to pull off. Now, let's start with the brand that I have here, but there are so many of them. So we have Vallejo Game Color, great, available pretty much everywhere in the world, great selection of color, great quality of pigment. I do thin the paint that need to be thin, and 1 drop of color, 1 drop of thinner. We have AK 3rd generation, great and fantastic. This is more of an artist brand. This is golden. This is pre-thin. This is an acrylic ink, a high quality finger touch ink. This is Molotov. This is a pre-thin paint, super opaque. That is an acrylic ink. This is an acrylic but not pre-tinned. This is Atom, fantastic. And this is Cobra, fundamentally the same as Atom. Now, why would you go into it? As I was saying, they are way less safe. They are way more safe. You have way more option. However, how to find out the one that you like? So, not everything is perfect. They're a bit harder to thin. You need to fundamentally understand the thinning ratio, and Google is your friend there. Not all the colors from all the brands come in the same way. Honestly, some color from some brands are better. Third, you need to know that some paints are opaque and some paints are less opaque. Some are matte, some are less matte. Some color are very hard to pull in acrylic form. I'm saying about white. white is a color, the best of the white acrylic can hold a candle to super white from Gaia notes. Like they're not really into the same level, but the good thing is that you never use a super white, like something bright as titanium white. Said so. So the difference between acrylic and acrylic ink, sorry, we'll go very quickly. Acrylic ink are very, very transparent. Depends how you want to paint. Opaque means you don't want to see the color that is showing behind. Transparent, you want to show it. So for some technique you want clear, you want opaque, from some other you don't want. Said so, the new revolution into this world, if you are a Gundam player, are the Atom, the Ionic, and the Cobra paint. These are pure acrylic that are resistant to lacquer, and you don't have to wait 2 months to cure it. Like you need to wait for it to cure it. So if you don't have a big involvement into lacquer, I will go acrylic. That is from my perspective. Now we're gonna look at the thinner. Most of this paint need to be thinned, and it's gonna be a bit dependent about the size of your airbrush, how you like to brush it. However, this is my favorite thinner, and that's it. There are some other kind of acrylic that I forgot to mention. There are the Tamiya that cannot be found anymore, at least in Calgary where I live. And then we have the Mr. Robbie. Mr. Robbie has two lines, Aqueous and Acryos. Aqueous is like the Tamiya paints, which are acrylic lacquer, they call them. So it's acrylic pigment into lacquer, and you kind of thin it with alcohol-based paint. I mean, for me, it's a lacquer fundamentally. It doesn't smell good. I wouldn't doesn't treat well the brush. I don't know why they acrylic is just the name of the pigment. The main difference between thin. Anyway, this theoretic discussion for another time. Sorry. And the Creation is a full acrylic. The Creation is not a good quality acrylic. It's not bad. Anyway, Aqueous, this is their own thinner. I didn't test it with the other acrylic, because I suppose it's mainly alcohol, so it wouldn't work very well with it. But Aqueous, if you thin it correctly, spray exactly like a lacquer. Still, it's alcohol based, so not a giant fan. And I mean, they just have removed it from the hobby store around Canada, so there is that. If somebody know the reason, I think it's the same as Tamiya, which means they lied about the content, or at least they have some content of some ingredient that they cannot advertise as full acrylic. For everything else, it is the Atom thinner and cleaner. There are two versions of it, one with retarder, the other one without retarder. The one without retarder is way safer than the one with retarder. Said so, it's a great thinner. You don't have dry tip or anything like that, which happens with other kind of thinner. It's a known problem if you thin it with this thinner, and they all work pretty well. Honestly, some of them don't need to be thin, as the Molotov, the inks, the pre-thin one, but for everybody else, Atom thinner is what I recommend. 1:1, that is the ratio that I use with most of it, or 2:1, depending how small is the tail that I'm working on, or the airbrush that I'm using. Hopefully this helps a tiny bit onto the ratio that are always kind of hard to find out. With this thinner, this is the ratio. Now for the lacquer paint. So lacquer paint, at least in North America, as far as I know, you can find 2-3 brands. I'm skipping the AK True Color, I think is the name. I don't like them. I tried them. I just I very much like their acrylics, but their lacquer mid. So we have the Gaia Nuts, we have the Mr. Color jigs, we have the Mr. Color, and we have Finisher that a couple of websites, Galaxy Hobby, I think, was able to get it. I don't know if they still can. So they all have a finish gloss. Actually depends. Some of them they will have written over the box if the finish is gloss or satin. The quality of the Gaia paint is the one that I favor between the three of them. I had some quality control issue with Finisher. Great color, but not but I technically bought 5 different colors and they were all the same one. So there is that. But still, they're all pretty good quality. They're all pretty compatible and comparable with one another. The difference is how much you thin one with another. So Mr. Color gets thin with Mr. Thinner 1:1. Mr. Color jigs get in with Mr. Color leveling thinner 1:1. So 1 drop on one, 1 drop on the other one. Gaia Nuts is 1 drop of color, 2 drop of thinner. finisher, 1 drop of color, 2 drop of thinner, even 3 actually. I mean, I think you could push it up to 4. That stuff is super dense and covers super well. Now remember, if you use lacquer, first of all, they're more toxic. Second, you can easily reactivate the color that you have behind, so that what is happening is that the layer of color that you put on the top of it changes, and it's not the one that you had planned. You see very often somebody that does a Gampla on Reddit, and then he posts it, hey, what's happened? It was white when I sprayed, and now it's like some kind of gray, and fundamentally reactivated the black layer after and the mix. Said so, lacquer highly recommended if you plan to go into masking, so into the resin kit kind of world, or if you like very, very shiny finishes, as like toy-like finish. They're going to be easier to be achieved with the lacquer versus the acrylic. But remember, the discussion beginning about safety. Safety is very important. You only have one life. If you have a proper setup, a proper boot, there is no problem. But if you're the guy that say, yeah, I forgot my mask, yeah, so maybe not. Maybe go acrylic. You can reach very, very, very comparable results with both of them. Okay. So this is two. These are the 3 brands that I have around. I use way more lacquer, but within the metallics, and metallics will be a very, very different discussion that we're gonna start exactly right now. Okay, sorry guys, metallics. Okay, while as you can see, I'm not a giant fan of lacquer because of toxicity, because of the reactivation problem, because of you never know, and I think that acrylic do everything and better more often than not. Different discussion it is for metallics. So there are no acrylic paint that are on the same level of a high level lacquer paint, period. I did a Kickstarter from P3 or GameFound from P3 from some time ago. I'm waiting for them to ship the silver, that according to some reviewer is very, very good. However, I don't believe those reviewers this much, because these are reviewers of only acrylic paint, and metallics are 99% of the time superior in metallic form. The only exception of good metallics are this one by Vallejo. Now they're releasing a new line True Metallic color. I will review it on the channel. I bought the full case. These are pretty good, but they look like lacquer, not the top tier, but very good one. But they don't have the same characteristic as lacquer, which means they're gonna break way easier. And there is not too much choice of colors. I think it's like 10 color in total, maybe 12, something like that. The gold is terrible, like not great. But these are, if you go for a silver, duraluminum, beautiful color, these are a-okay, as long as you don't touch them and you don't weather them much and you look them from a few feet away. Yeah, okay. So maybe the P3, I will put an Instagram story about it if you're interested into it, or I can give an update. So everybody else that say this color is great, this is gold, so no, they're not. 99% of them are done with mica. The pigment is very big. They're not made with like, I don't know what they come from. I think they try to do the best within the limit that they cannot put inside a medium that is, it's not as toxic as it should be to carry metallic colors. So some of them look okay brushed. I brush a bit less so. So let's move out of acrylics. A tiny bit of exception out of it. There are some color that are the color shift one. The color shift acrylic, I think only Vallejo did it. No, also Gridstaff World. They're terrible. Like honestly, from 0 to 1, 1.5. You can use for a particular project. And why they're terrible? They're not terrible in absolute sense. They're terrible compared to the lacquer counterparts. That is what they were inspired from. Now, metallics. Let's start to think about the real stuff. There is the Mr. Hobby, Mr. Metal Color, and there is the Mr. Metallics. There are different degree of color, of metallic color and pigment within this line. On average, the more mid of this one is going to be superior to an acrylic paint. They will not look particularly good brushed. This is only for airbrush. Then there is the Mr. Metallic Color GX, which give you a tiny bit more particular metallic color out of it. Overall, you will see 25 different versions of gold and silver and not much in the world of other color. You see one blue, one green, not too much. However, these are very high quality. As it stands, there are not acrylics that can compare to it. Metallics, if you're into it. Now, these are very easy to find and they're nice. However, if you have been in the Gundam world for a while, you heard about Gaia knots, you have heard about their Star Bright Gold. So they're very good, and they're not easy to find because of their production cycle. So I cannot recommend because you won't be able to find it. But you can most likely find the line Prime Metal. The Prime Metal is a carbon copy of their color, same as quality, same thinning ratio, great gold, and you can find it on AliExpress. So if you have access to that, this brilliant gold is great. This is a lacquer paint, obviously, and they come out perfect. High quality, almost indistinguishable, quality-wise very similar to the Star Bright Gold. But font even better, depending who you ask. What is your perception of the color? Now, they do have a selection. Gaia, however, has some colors that are not copied by other companies, which are their limited edition, their Prism color. They have 3 of them. I own 2 of them. They are amazing. So if you like metallics and color shift, this is like they are like, I mean, after you try one and you go back and you try a laser again, you say, what were you guys trying to achieve? Anyway, great. They're blue-black, the green-blue, and the other one is the blue-violet. These are the 3 that they made. Very expensive, hard to find, but if you can, amazing metallics. Now, a bit more exotic, Born paints. Born paints are on average with the Gaia knots as metallics. On some color they are superior, however quality control is on and off, so you might get a bottle that doesn't look like the same one that you bought with the same color. The only reason I know about them is because of 5-star stories. These are the official color of the kits. On average their chrome is better than the other chromes, but I will speak a tiny bit about chromes at the end, because some people are really into it. Anyway, very high quality metallics, superior to the Mr. Color, on pair with the Gaia, sometimes better, sometimes less, depending on the color. Now, if you, sorry, there is a bit of sediment, as you can see, I bought them some time ago. Now, if you are in the Western world, most likely you were aware of this bottle. This is the Alclad. Alclad can be found pretty much anywhere. I think they've been acquired by Ammo some time ago, and a friend of mine told me they changed formulation and they're not as good as they used to be. Now, this is an amazing pre-thinner lacquer paint. Sometimes lacquer, sometimes enamel. I had a discussion with a friend about it. On some paint, they write lacquer, but it's technically enamel, and some vice versa. Somebody knows the story behind it, please write it below. Anyway, if you can find it, limited selection of color, but extremely good, extremely high quality. Now, for all of these paints, all the metallic one, lacquer, you want to use this thinner. This is the metallic thinner from Gaia knots, superior, hands down superiors to the rapid thinner from Mr. Color. And you don't want to use the leveling thinner because you don't want to slow down the process. Now, before I forget, chrome. We're gonna speak about chrome in a tiny bit of second because it's a tiny bit more specific subsector. And more often than not, the people that are into Gundam decide to airbrush because they want to do a candy coat finish. Then they do one and they say, yeah, that's not, like, looks better in picture. So we're gonna quickly speak about lacquer. And yeah, and sometimes there are some channels that are, I think Barbatos, we used to be mainly about chromes, but I don't know, I don't think I see the color in the same way as him. Anyway, oh sorry, before I forgot, can you spray a metallic color over an acrylic base, or a lacquer base over a lacquer color over an acrylic primer? Sure you can, but you need to wait for the primer to be fully cured, which doesn't mean 24 hours, or more often than not, we're speaking about a week. To be fully cured, not just dry to the touch. And you want to go with thin passes so that you don't burn through it. You can, I did it, there is no problem. I know this is a question about it. You can even just use, lacquer for the metallics paint out of it and be totally okay. Now, can you spray an acrylic over a lacquer? Sure, there is no problem whatsoever. An acrylic over a lacquer will never give any kind of problem. Actually, it's pretty recommended if you can, if you do have the safety device in place. Now, we're almost done with the video, guys. Sorry if this is super long. Last bit, candy and chrome. Okay, why do we do a full section about candy and chrome while this one is about airbrushing? So first of all, a lot of people that start into airbrushing Gundam, they do it because they want to do a candy coat, and the only way you can achieve a candy coat is through airbrushing. That's not true. You can do it also by hand, but holy cow, I don't recommend it to anybody. It takes a lot of time. So a candy coat is normally a very metallic finish where you start from a very gloss black base, you put a chrome or a silver or a mirror on the top of it, and then you cover it with a clear paint, which is a very, very thin paint, and you tint it. This is how it works in general. Now, more often than not, the paint that gets used to do this work is the Alclad Chrome, because it's cheap, it gets sold by the bottle, and so that is the one that it gets compared to. However, that's not the only option to achieve a candy coat. Depending on the color you want to put on top, you might want to use a gold base. If you want to achieve a super ultra metallic finish, you might want to look into other kind of more hard to find chrome that are a bit more bright, or a different kind of black base below it. Now the top color on the top of it, they are, give it or take it, the same. So they are just pretty in color, you put on the top of it, and they're gonna tint the final. So the final result on the candy coat depends on the chrome. Now the quality of the not all the chrome are born the same way. And I'm speaking about chrome because one of the first problems you find out in airbrushing is that your brush chrome, it comes good, then you touch it and it stays on your hand. Like, not all the chrome are born the same. There are some chrome that are tiny bit more resistant, there are some that are brighter, there are some that work better with some color, and some that work better with another one. So the Gaianot is a tiny bit more resistant than the Alclad, that is one of the less resistant one, and the Born Paints is the brightest chrome you can achieve within the lacquer world, as long as you use it in its system, which means it's on black base, Born Paint black paints, it's on mirror chrome or chrome, and it's all clears on the top of it to tint it. Now, in an absolute term, it's not the clearest one. The clearest one is the Show Up, the Terra one, the one with written Terra there. But you can achieve very, very bright results by using these ultra metallics, which are terrible color per se by Mr. Color, but you can spray clear over it. You can also tint over a silver one, as I was saying. It really depends the final effect. Like, normally I'm not a fan of testing stuff, but here you really have to test it. Now, if you want the absolute brightness, like the mirror chrome shine, the crazy mirror chrome, Show Up is the one that you want to look for. It's not a real lacquer toy, it's a urethane with a different kind of paint over it. Like, I can't even remember. Very expensive. Overall, they're different level, they are different finishing, but it's all gonna depend from the base and like how you treat the base at the bottom, and the gloss black, how much it is resistant to other paint and how glossy it is. So experiment with chromes, find the one you can find around the store, don't get crazy about finding anything around it. Try it at least once. There are some cool chromes around. Sorry, this was a bit of a digression. Let's go back to a bit that you might be interested. Clears. So independently from the color that you start to brush it, you can change its nature into gloss, semi-gloss, and matte at the end of it. So gloss is the reflective one, semi-gloss is most of the things in reality, and matte is a brick. I don't know why into the Gunpla world you always see them very, very matte. They say it's more realistic. I do think the reality things are semi-matte, if you ask to me, but it is what it is. And just pay attention on what color you spray over another one. So you can put an acrylic clear over anything, and it will not impact anything that there is below. However, gloss acrylic is not great. Then there are the acrylic lacquer mix like Mr. Aqueous. These are okay. You can spray even on everything. Just pay attention over acrylics you want to be cured. So you want a few days before you put a clear coat. And then we have the Mr. Color. So the Mr. Color, you can also use it. You cannot use it over every kind of acrylics, only with the one that are lacquer resistant. So the Atom, Ionic, and Cobra. Gloss, semi-gloss. The UV are the one that are made so that to avoid yellowing. So if you paint something very white, it will not become yellow over time. Now you choose. I normally don't use them. I have them there, they stay there, because I know exactly what kind of finish I was from the beginning, but you can always paint everything one shot. So this is everything for the first video. I think it was very long. If you have any question, look below. The next video we're gonna look at the technique, so me airbrushing, me cleaning the brush, me do a tiny bit of, like, you know, a zenithal, max technique, you know, basic techniques, so that you can learn as well. If you have any question, write it below, subscribe, share the video, and have an amazing rest of the day.